Today's video, I'm going to take y'all along as I prepare some foods for my family on this day, and we're going to talk about true nourishment, truly nourishing our bodies, specifically our children's bodies. I made a video on this topic probably 2 to 3 years ago now, and it kind of hit me one night when my husband was saying the prayer before dinner. Here in the South, we live in Mississippi, a very common phrase that almost everyone says at church dinners, family gatherings, just we say it at our family dinner at night is, thank you, Lord, for this meal that you've blessed us with to nourish our bodies. And as he said that prayer that night, I had literally heard that line in the prayer said so many times throughout my entire life. But that night, something just hit me, and I thought, is the food I prepared for my family tonight truly nourishing their bodies? And how oftentimes is that prayer said at so many events, especially here in the South, and the food that is about to be served is nowhere near nourishing to our bodies. So that is what this video is going to talk about, is true nourishment. It's really challenging us as mothers to truly think about what we're feeding our families, specifically our children, and is that food nourishing? This is a topic I'm very passionate about. I think so many children these days don't even have a fighting chance because they are fed such poor diets. So I don't ever share this information to guilt anyone or make anyone feel bad for what they're feeding their children. I believe we as mothers are truly all doing the best we can with the knowledge that we have and the means that we have. So there's been times in my life where I did not know this stuff, and I did not probably feed my family the most nourishing foods, or we couldn't afford certain things to feed my family, and I did the best I could with what I had. So I just want to encourage you, if that is your situation, don't feel guilty. Just take this information, use it as a challenge to learn and grow in the area of nourishing foods. Just challenge yourself to continually grow in this area in feeding our children. So I have been asked before, do I not feel guilty for letting my children have holiday candy, or like Easter candy or Christmas candy or Halloween candy, or even things like, do you not feel guilty not letting your child have a certain cake at a birthday party they're attending, or let your child eat whatever they want at the birthday party because it's just a birthday party, it's just one time, it's not really going to hurt them. I've also been asked, do I not feel guilty when my children refuse to eat their meal and ask for a separate meal? Do I feel guilty for letting them go to bed hungry or wait till the next meal? Those are things I do not feel guilty for, and that may sound cruel to most people, not letting them have holiday candies or letting them go to bed hungry. But that is not something I feel guilty for personally. That is something my children have grown up knowing. They know that we don't eat certain foods at certain events. They know that we don't eat holiday candies, and they know that if they don't eat their meal, at the meal that is provided, they will be hungry until the next meal. They won't get snacks between. That is just something I don't feel guilty for. That is just taking control and authority of your children's health because they don't know any better. Our little ones do not know any better as far as what food is healthy for them and what foods are not. Now, they eventually start to feel the difference when they eat certain foods, how that makes their body feel. Like, for example, my 5-year-old, we were at a holiday event one time and he wanted something and I let him try it, a very small piece of something that I knew had dyes, probably had seed oils, had not high quality ingredients, but I let him have a small bit because I think there is a fine line of controlling what your children eat to an extent, but also letting them explore and learn for themselves what foods make their bodies feel like. So I let him have whatever this thing was. I can't even remember at this point what it was now, but it was just at a family holiday gathering. And later on that day, he told me his stomach hurt and his head was kind of hurting. And we talked about, well, remember when you asked to eat such and such food? The reason you're probably not feeling your best right now is because that food was not healing and healthy for your body. We talk about how all foods are either helping us or harming us, and that specific food he ate was not a food that helped his body to stay healthy and to thrive. It was a very harmful food, and if continually eaten, it can cause a lot of detriment to our bodies, and he so quickly understood. And now so often at places, sometimes I even have to kind of watch his mouth because he might blurt out to the person there that this food is not healthy and we don't need this kind of food. And I never want to shame the people where we're eating for the foods they provide, because I know that people, like I said, people are doing the best they can with what they have. But I, as my children's mother, take the full responsibility for what my children eat. So I don't feel guilty for making their plates at events, and my children are still 5 and under. So there will become a time where I release that control to them and let them learn what foods are healthy for them and what foods aren't. But at this young age, I take full responsibility for that. So no, I don't feel guilty when they don't get to eat holiday candy. We just make our own holiday candy here, make it homemade so we know the ingredients that are in it. I don't feel guilty for my child not eating their entire dinner and then being hungry until the next meal. They know that they won't get a snack, even a piece of fruit between meals if they don't eat some or most of their meal. I'm not making my children clean their plates, guys. I'm not militaristic and being really cruel about this. It's just understood in our home that if you don't eat some or all of your meal, that you won't have any snacks, even if it's a piece of fruit, until the next meal. If you decide you're really hungry, I will offer you your lunch or your dinner or your breakfast, and if you decide to eat it, then you can go on and have that said snack, whether it's fruit or if we have homemade brownies or homemade cake. Then if you go back and eat that meal, then you can have the option for the snack. What I would feel guilty for is if my children suffered from some of these chronic illnesses and ailments that so many children suffer for these days. Things like chronic ear infections multiple times a year, children that are basically on allergy medication year round or multiple times a year, children that continually get strep throat, children that suffer with ADD and ADHD, children that have chronic diarrhea, chronic constipation, that have just extreme gut issues from bowel problems from the food that they are eating. Children that have extreme food aversions because their gut is so out of whack. It's so incorrect from the foods they have been fed. Children that get colds just every time it comes around. To an extent, our bodies will get sick, but if our bodies are fed well and fed healthy, our children, we as parents as well, should not be getting sick every time the common cold comes around. So those are the things I would feel guilty for, not making my child skip a meal because they refuse to eat the food I make. And I can tell you from experience, my oldest now has learned that if he does not eat most or all of his meal that is provided, then he will not get a snack in between, and he has learned to eat his meals and fill his belly. My younger ones are still learning this, and it is a learning process, but I assure you, if you start them young with this and teaching them what foods are healing, what foods are nourishing, and not give in to the snacks in between meals and give in to even making a separate meal. I think a lot of times we feel like if our child doesn't like the meal we provided, that we have to make them a separate kid-friendly meal. Things like chicken nuggets or mac and cheese, and there are healthier options to those things, but our children will learn that those are kid foods and that they like those kid foods, and kid foods are only kid foods if we make them that way. My children just know that we eat food, and they eat the food that my husband and I eat, and that's all they've known. We don't make separate meals for our children if they refuse to eat the meal that I cooked, and they have learned. It has been a process, and if you have children that are more addicted to those kid foods and those processed foods, this will be a harder transition than if you started them off like this from birth, but it can be done. I've heard stories of mamas who transitioned their children off the terrible diets in a week or two, just telling them no, just putting their foot down, showing that authority in the position as the mother, as the gatekeeper of the food in the home. Quit buying that food, quit letting your children have it, quit caving in if they refuse to eat the meal you cook. Eventually they'll get hungry enough and they'll eat the next meal, maybe a couple of meals they skip, but they will learn that they want food in their bellies, and they will learn to eat the more nourishing foods you're cooking. Now, another key here is you've got to eat this food as well. And my husband and I slowly started transitioning off the standard American diet our first year, 2 years of marriage. So there was, we kind of were off all of the traditional processed American diet by the time our children were old enough to make food choices. But if you're not there yet, I encourage you as the mother to stop eating these foods yourself. I know a lot of my followers are already pretty far on their healthier food journeys and transitioning to a more nourishing diet, but just encourage those, maybe if you're not there, get there yourself and bring your children along with you. Teach them why we eat certain foods, why we don't eat certain other foods. And like the example I told you of my son before, eating the food at the family event that made him feel not so well, letting them have experiences like that, when you start truly nourishing their bodies, they will pick up really quickly what makes their body feel good and what makes their body feel poorly. We don't give our children enough credit for leaning into their body's intuition. Our children are probably more intuitive at knowing what they need to eat than we are as of their parent, but if they're not offered these foods and taught that these foods are healthy, they're not going to lean into eating them. I'm not saying my children eat perfectly everything I prepare. For the most part, they do eat most of it. And like I said, if there's always a few meals that I make that one or two children, or maybe all three of my children that are eaters, don't want to eat. But again, they might miss a meal, they might be a little hungry, but they're not going to starve to death until the next meal. But they're not going to get snacks in between. Now, as far as snacks, I've talked about this before, we don't offer a lot of snacks in our family. But here I am making some homemade cereal. This is a perfect little bitty snack with some milk, maybe some fruit for your children if they have eaten their meal. Like I said, snacking was one of the ultimate reasons my children weren't eating their meals for a time. I was letting them fill up on apples and bananas and basically fruit. They were healthy snacks. Even things like boiled egg, like they were filling up on snacks and not eating the nourishing meals that I was preparing for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So we cut out snacks for a little while. I have a video on that, on how we cut out snacks, and I basically broke the snacking habit for my family. But if your children are snacking a lot and you are making these really nourishing, hearty meals and they're not eating them, it might just be because they're not hungry. So I'll link that video on snacking and how we broke the snacking habit. I prepare snacks in our home now. They're all usually homemade or they're fruit, but my children don't get them if they did not eat the meal, and I don't let them like constantly snack. It's a very small snack, and then they wait till the next meal. As mothers, we have so much responsibility for our children's health. If my children suffered from any of those previous illnesses and ailments I talked about, I would take full responsibility for that because I am the one in control of what they eat. I am in control of their environment right now, especially when they're still so young. And if they started chronically having a lot of those things, or even just occasionally, I would really want to assess what I was feeding my family, what environment my family was living in, and what I might need to change to get to the root cause of why my child was having these issues or ailments or sicknesses. Because most of the time, the root cause of this is our family's diet. And if we can get that under control and truly start nourishing their bodies from the inside out, a lot of these things will go away. Our bodies know how to heal. They just have to be fed well and fed nourishing foods. So I hope this was encouraging to you. I'm finishing up a homemade lasagna here. This is one of my family's favorite meals. I love making homemade lasagna. It is kind of an all-day event. I do a little bit throughout the day so I can get it done and have it cooked, and then it can set up a little bit before dinner time because I do like anything with a red sauce to kind of set up a little bit before we eat it. So that goes for lasagna too. All I did for this recipe is make some homemade noodles. I will link the recipe for that below. I've finally mastered homemade noodles. For a while I was having really sticky, gooey noodles that did not roll out well, but this is a really good recipe. I'll link down below for homemade noodles. If you want to try them out and make a homemade lasagna, you can also make spaghetti noodles with this or any pasta noodles with this pasta recipe. Instead of ricotta for our lasagna, I just use cottage cheese because we can easily make cottage cheese with our milk. I leave the milk out at room temperature to coagulate. Basically, it's clabber. I've talked a little bit about clabber. And then I warm it on the oven to about 90 degrees. Then I strain it and it makes a cottage cheese type, really cheesy, flavorful texture for our cottage cheese. I also made homemade cereal in this video. As I mentioned, this is just a snack I like to have on hand. I have been playing around with some different recipes for this, so I'm going to share my perfected recipe in an upcoming video if you want to try out this homemade cinnamon toast crunch type cereal. I grew up in the 90s. I grew up on box cereal. Not grew up on, we didn't eat it all the time, but we had box cereal and it was a favorite of mine and my sister's. So this is a delicious cinnamon toast crunch copycat recipe. I have tweaked around with the amount of butter, so I will be sharing that recipe soon. But this was a snack that I packed for my children to take to their t-ball game. T-ball is a perfect example of when children are offered terrible snacks. Our children just played an athletic sport. Not that t-ball is that strenuous, but our children are running around and they're in the heat, and then they give them a bag of chips and a Gatorade, or a bag of chips and a Coke. And that's just not nourishing for our children. So I did pack a little jar of cereal and a jar of collagen protein milk to pour over the cereal for them to have after their game before we get home and eat dinner that night, the lasagna. Pray you found this video encouraging, talking just about our children and truly nourishing them and taking control and authority as the mother on what we are putting in their bodies. Taking the time to truly learn what foods are nourishing, make these foods that are nourishing. Yes, it takes more time. Yes, it takes a little bit of learning to make some of these foods from scratch. But once you start, you realize how much healthier it is for your family. You will see your family's health start to turn on, and it is so worth it. So I just encourage you to take something from this video, take one small thing and start researching it, learning it, start making one new food from scratch with higher quality ingredients for your family. And then I promise you will truly start to see your family's health slowly shift. Their bodies will start to heal. Their sicknesses will be less often, and you will feel so proud as their mama that you have taken control and learned to truly nourish your family's bodies.